All right, take number two on today's podcast of the Penn State 365 podcast. Our first episode had a little bit of technical difficulties, so we had to restart. But, gentlemen, the biggest game day of the week, biggest game week, I should say, for Penn State. The number 7 team in the country, travel to Columbus on Saturday to take on the number 3 Ohio State Buckeyes. A matchup between two undefeated teams, both at 6-0 on the season. And the winner of this weekend's game is going to have the upper hand in the Big Ten East, at least heading until next month, until both teams take on the Michigan Wolverines. There's been a lot of conversation surrounding this game this week. We started that conversation earlier this week in our UMass recap, and I said that this was the biggest game of the James Franklin era. This is the chance for Penn State to get over that Ohio State hump. They have, had opportunity after opportunity. They've played hard for 3 quarters, haven't been able to get over the hump. This may be a do or die situation for Penn State. Sure, they could always get an upset later down the road, but this is by far the best team James Franklin has had at Penn State. Is this the biggest game of James Franklin's career? Marty, I'm going to kick it to you first, and then we'll just pass it to Anthony after that. But Marty, in your opinion, has there been a bigger game in the James Franklin tenure than this week?
I don't know if I'm ready to go as far as saying this is the biggest game they've had, but if they win, other than maybe that 2016 Big Ten championship game, this would be the biggest win they've had. It would definitely be the biggest regular season win James has had. Um, Bigger than the 2016 Ohio State game for a lot of reasons, one of which being this game is in Columbus. I just, this is a program that has been so close for so many years to taking that next step, to getting over that hill. I heard a great analogy this week from Pete Thamel of ESPN. He said, Penn State is a program that lives firmly within that closed gate cul-de-sac of college football, but can't quite take that next step to the penthouse, and how there are very few programs that live in that closed gate cul-de-sac, even fewer programs that are in that penthouse, and there might not be any programs within that cul-de-sac that have been closer to taking that step than Penn State in recent years. I mean, in 2017, they were so painfully close in Columbus. The last 12 minutes of that game will pain me till the day I die, just slowly watching the wheels fall off. And I know we probably say similar things every year when they play Ohio State, that this is their chance. They win this game Saturday. You take dead aim at Michigan. You take dead aim at a college football playoff berth. Um, but this year feels different. It just feels different. When's the last time Penn State played Ohio State and you truly thought Penn State was top to bottom level with them in the roster? Even that 2017 game that Penn State should have won in Columbus, the depth wasn't there. And quite honestly, the difference in depth is why Ohio State won that game, because Penn State couldn't overcome the injuries to Ryan Bates and Ryan Buckles. They're in positions to do that now. When was the last time that you consider make the argument Penn State has more talent on the roster, is the better all-around roster than Ohio State? Because that's an argument that can certainly be made right now. And on top of that, as we're going to get into, Ohio State is in a very different position than Penn State. Penn State's coming into this game extremely healthy and extremely well rested. Ohio State is neither of those things. This team is banged up. They have had to play some dog fights the last few weeks. Now, on the flip side, you could say they're more battle tested, because they absolutely are, but they are a banged up squad. They're kind of limping into this game in some fashions, and just, man, you feel like if they don't get them this year, if they can't win this one, if ever, do they win in Columbus? I'm not going to say do they ever beat Ohio State, but just when, if ever, do they win in Columbus if they can't pull it off this year? I truly believe Penn State, top to bottom, is a better team than Ohio State this year. That is something I don't know if I've ever said in my life. I truly don't know if even when years Penn State has beaten them in the last 2-3 decades. Other than maybe some of those teams in the 90s that I'm too young to remember. I don't know if I ever truly felt they were more talented top to bottom than Ohio State. And I feel that way this year. This is just an absolutely golden opportunity knocking at the door on Saturday afternoon in Columbus. I remember that 2016 game at halftime. There's the footage of Franklin telling his team, opportunity is knocking. What are you going to do? Well, that opportunity is knocking again on Saturday. How is this team going to respond?
Yeah, perfectly well said. Anthony, I'll kick it to you now. Just what's your initial thoughts heading into this game before we talk about some key injuries, stats to know, and break it down position by position?
Yeah, I mean, I think Marty summed it up beautifully. I mean, that was a great analogy with, they're in the cul-de-sac, but they're not in the penthouse. And break that down even more. I think for James Franklin, is there a coach in college football right now who has accomplished as much as he has without reaching that mountaintop? And that's why, for me, I truly think that this is the most important game of James Franklin's career, at least in the regular season. Um, to me, this is a legacy game for James Franklin. I don't want to say his career is kind of at a crossroads because he's accomplished so much and he's done so much for Penn State and this program over the 10 years he's been here. But to me, the crossroads for him right now is going from being considered a good, not great head football coach to being in the conversation of the guys at the top of the sport. He wins this game. He goes into Columbus, conquers that demon, beats Ohio State. All of a sudden, he's got a shot to get to the playoff, which is the one blemish on his resume as of right now. Like you reach that mountaintop, and obviously the mountaintop is the national championship. James Franklin will tell you the same thing, but you know, you got to get that first step of the playoff, and obviously, yeah, in the 12-team playoff, I'm sure he'll make it with Penn State as long as he decides he wants to stay around at least a few times. But yeah, this to me is such an important game, not just for Penn State as a program, because for the program, it would be a tremendous and honestly changing win.
Yeah.
But for James Franklin and his career and how he's viewed at Penn State, I think this would be a legacy victory for him. And I think he recognizes that. And I think the team recognizes that.
Yeah, well said. And I do apologize for those on YouTube if you saw my mouse going across the screen a little bit. I know that can be a little distracting, but yeah, great points there, Anthony. And I do agree with you on those. And yeah, they once the playoff expands, Penn State should be a perennial playoff team. But the playoffs right now, as a 14 playoff, there's only an exclusive group of programs that can say they've been a part of that. And if Penn State can get into that group, albeit in the final year, that still says a lot about where this program is heading into the expanded college football playoffs. Um, let's talk about this game. I mean, this is a game. Ohio State entering the weekend right now, 4.5 point favorite. Over under here is about 45 points. You look at the models. The models tend to favor Ohio State here by 4 to 5 points, which you would expect. Now, I mean, if you want to talk about the 4.5 points, in Vegas's eyes, a home field is usually considered, worth about 3 points in the spread, which kind of makes this more so of a toss-up game in the eyes of Vegas on a neutral field. And I mean, you look at these two teams offensively, defensively. I think there's a lot of similarities between them, and I think that's going to create a really great game between these two programs on Saturday. Before we get into position by position breakdowns, I guess it is worth mentioning there are a few key injuries here for Ohio State to watch coming into this weekend. We start at the running back position. The Buckeyes have not one, two, but three running backs on the mend this weekend. Star running backs Travion Henderson and Mayan Williams were both out last week. We'll see if they return this week. My guess is they probably both end up playing. Third string running back / fourth string running back Chip Trainium also is on the mend. He took a nasty hit last week. Looks like he may be suffering from a concussion. I'm not sure we should expect him to play for the Buckeyes on Saturday. But the two arguably biggest ones of the day, because even if those three running backs don't play, they still have Dallas Hayden, who's a very capable running back himself. The two biggest ones of the day for Ohio State to watch on Saturday: wide receiver Emeka Egbuka and defensive back Denzel Burke. Egbuka, if Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to play on Saturday. He's been dealing with a couple of ankle injuries this season, but he is expected to play. There's no concern there. But Egbuka is the Buckeyes' number 2 wide receiver, a linchpin of that offense, a versatile wide receiver who can do a lot for that offense and is kind of an X factor for the Buckeyes. If he's a no-go, that's huge for them. Even if he plays, I wonder how effective he's going to be able to be. Denzel Burke is their best defensive back. I don't think with if he's missing, Penn State's going to be able to expose that pass defense for Ohio State. But I think without Burke, that is a little bit of a significant development, because I think at that point there's a further chance that Penn State maybe is able to get a 1, 2, 3 big passing plays in this game that could decide it. For Penn State, not a ton of injuries for the Nittany Lions, which if you ask them is a huge, would have been the most ideal situation possible coming in this season, coming in this game, was that they wouldn't have a ton of injuries. They haven't had a ton of injuries this season, and that's a big reason they're 6-0 this year. The most notable injury heading into this weekend is offensive lineman J.B. Nelson. He was carted off the field 3 weeks ago against Northwestern, did not play last week against UMass, but was full participant on practice on Wednesday. It sounds like the Nittany Lions are going to expect him and Vega Ione to both play and lock down that left guard position on Saturday against Ohio State. Let's get into the position-by-position breakdowns. We'll throw some key stats in there as well. And we start at the quarterback position. Kyle McCord for Ohio State, Drew Allar for Penn State. Despite the two offenses they're in, a lot of people may think they're different offenses, and in reality, they're quite similar. Kyle McCord, Allar, both kind of taking the exact same throws this year for the course of the season. Both are looking at the short passes for the majority of their throws. They're willing to check down, take what the defense gives them, not taking a ton of deep shots. But overall, gentlemen, this is a game where I think this is kind of a toss-up at the quarterback position. Maybe you give McCord a slight edge as the home quarterback here, now and have to face a hostile crowd. But at the same time, McCord is a quarterback who's struggled under pressure this season. Penn State's defensive line, you would expect to get pressure in this one. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But I guess, Anthony, how would you, who would you give the edge to here? Would you give it to McCord, or would you give it to Allar, or is it a toss-up?
I think for the most part, it's pretty much just a toss-up. I mean, I don't think it's so funny because I don't know what to expect from either guy in this game. I think they've both had decent tests so far, like McCord against Notre Dame, Drew against Iowa's defense. Both guys came out of those games victorious. Neither guy was overly stellar, although Drew, did his part in the Iowa game. I think it's going to be very interesting to see from McCord how he holds up against this Penn State front seven. I think they're going to come after him as much as they possibly can. I think they're going to try to rattle him. And from a Ohio State perspective, McCord is a solid quarterback from what it seems, but he's not CJ Stroud. He's not Justin Fields. He's not Dwayne Haskins out there. He's beatable. And I think if you rattle him, I think you can force him into making mistakes. And I think that's what Manny Diaz is going to try to bet on. I think that's what Penn State's going to try to bet on to win this game. And I think that's going to be a big part of their game plan is forcing Kyle McCord to make plays. So but I think Ohio State's going to try to do the same thing to Drew. I think Drew is held up under pressure for the most part, but we'll see what happens when Ohio State tries to pin their ears back and come after him. Can he handle the pressure? Can he still make plays? Obviously, he's played it safe a lot of the time this year. He's going to probably have to try to make some big plays at some point. You can't just be 3 yards in a cloud of dust against Ohio State and expect to win this game, in my opinion. You're going to have to try to find an explosive play somewhere. So we'll see what Yurcich can scheme up. But yeah, I think these are quarterbacks with a lot of potential, but still question marks on both sides. So I think for the most part, it's pretty much a toss-up.
Some key stats about Kyle McCord. Overall this season, 64% completion percentage, 1,600 yards, 9.7 yards per attempt, 11 touchdowns to 1 interception. He has taken care of the football this season. It's a big reason why that Ohio State offense has been as successful as it's been. Like I said, this year, Kyle McCord and that offense has, looked more at the shorter routes than taking deep shots as we've seen in the past. Uh, when it comes to short passing attempts within 10 yards, McCord this season 58 of 71, 588, 3 touchdowns. Of course, with Ohio State's wide receivers, their fundamentals, route running abilities, they've been able to get good separation, strong releases off the line, which help that. Um, I think that's going to be a key area to watch in this game. How does Penn State's linebackers defend the pass this week? Are the defensive backs able to play tight man coverage in those situations as well when asked to do so? But when under pressure this year, Kyle McCord has struggled. Something that we haven't seen other Ohio State quarterbacks really struggle with in the past this season. Kyle McCord, under pressure, is 15 of 42 for 118 and 1 touchdown. He's been pressured on 29% of his dropbacks this season. This Ohio State offensive line isn't terrible, but it isn't a strong one. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But Marty, who do you give the edge to at quarterback? Is it McCord? Is it Allar? Or is it a toss-up in your mind as well?
I mean, I think it's kind of tough to say like who's really like proven more or anything. If we're talking purely talent, give me Drew Allar. It's not really much of a debate to me. I think you look at the two tests, and obviously they were different because McCord was in South Bend at night, while Drew Allers was at home against Iowa. McCord put together that drive at the end of the game to help Ohio State beat Notre Dame. But Drew played much better against Iowa as a whole than Kyle McCord did against Notre Dame. And I think, you mentioned it, Dylan, the struggles of Kyle McCord when pressured. I think that's going to be huge on Saturday because if nothing else, what is Manny Diaz going to do? It's going to pressure and harass the quarterback. And, with this Penn State defense, they can do that. They can do that without having to really bring anything extra, which I think is a huge factor on Saturday because the fact that Penn State is going to be able to get the McCord without him to do that, I think is huge. So, yeah, I think, in terms of who's proven more or whatever, you might almost lean McCord because he has that win at Notre Dame with the game-winning drive. But to me, the better quarterback based purely on talent is Drew Allar. And again, I know it's not an apples-to-apples comparison, and, it's kind of fitting they came on the same night at the same time. But when you look at their two big challenges as a whole, Allar played better against Iowa than McCord did against Notre Dame.
Well said, and I will say, and we will touch this more a little bit later on as well. But the key will be with Penn State against McCord is getting that pressure. I mean, I think we talked about last year heading into that game. Penn State's defensive line had the advantage over Ohio State last year, but didn't get a ton of pressure on C.J. Stroud. I think over the course of the game they had only 7 to 10 pressures, which allowed a quarterback like C.J. Stroud to pick apart a very good Penn State secondary. McCord is good when he's not under pressure. He has a 70% completion percentage and hasn't thrown an interception in that scenario yet this season. He racks up a ton of yards in those situations as well. As long as Penn State can't get pressure on McCord, I think there's a good chance we see McCord make a mistake or two in this game. Now you could say the same thing about Drew. We'll see how he reacts to, the first big road test for him. Running back is a position that, it's kind of hard to debate how it's going to go. Travion Henderson, Mayan Williams are very good running backs, but both are potentially coming off injuries entering this game. For Penn State, Katron Allen's had a good season. Nick Singleton looks like he may finally get it going after a good week against UMass last week. Ran with confidence for what felt like the first time this season. This may be another toss-up for me, but I think this is one where, depending on what you prefer in your running backs, you could probably go either way at this position when it comes to the edge. I think right now I'd probably go toss-up, but I mean, if Henderson is out and Ohio State's down to just one of those running backs, or if Williams is out and down one of those running backs, I may give Penn State the edge then at that point. Marty?
Yeah, to me, this is one where it's kind of tough too because I think Penn State overall has the slightly better running back room because I think Nick Singleton and Katron Allen are better, are the two best backs of the group. But if you based on what they've produced this year, that's when it becomes different because neither Singleton nor Allen have done, especially Singleton, I should say, have done what you expected. But the Ohio State running game, I mean, they're banged up right now, but even when they were healthy, they haven't really run the ball well either. So I think I would probably put this as a toss up. I think that Penn State's running back room has the higher potential, but I'm going to go toss up just because really neither running back room has come even close to reaching their full potential this season. And that could be something that decides this on Saturday. If one of these running back rooms can finally put together the type of performance people have been waiting on all season, that could be the difference in this game. But for now, I'll go toss up.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how Penn State's defensive tackles stand up against this Ohio State rushing attack. Ohio State hasn't had the best rushing attack this season. It's been solid, but it hasn't been tremendous. They're averaging 4.2 yards per carry. Right now, the leader in the clubhouse is Trayvon Henderson, 295 yards. Now, when he is healthy this year, he's averaging 6.7 yards per carry, which will be something to watch. But we'll see how healthy he is, and if he does play, how effective he will be. Anthony, thoughts on the running back position for both sides?
Yeah, I think for a lot of it, my answer kind of depends on how healthy Ohio State's room is. If Henderson and Williams play, I think you can call it a toss-up. I may even partially lean towards Ohio State, depending on just how healthy those guys are. Just because, like, in theory, Singleton and Allen are a great duo, but I've just been so disappointed by Singleton this year that it's really throwing off my evaluation of the running game so far. So,
Sure.
Penn State talent-wise is right there. So it'll kind of just depend on, who's healthy and who's not. But you need I think Allen will show up, but you need Singleton to have a big game. And hopefully he's got it in him this week. Hopefully last week maybe he figured some things out. He didn't break off any big ones, but he finally started to get some nice chunk plays of 10 yards or 9-10 yards a pop. So hopefully, that was a catalyst for him, and he can break one because they're going to need him to. But for now, I'll say it's a toss up.
All right. We'll move to wide receiver next, and I don't think this is one that we need to spend a ton of time on, just because even if Emeka Egbuka is out, Ohio State still has the best wide receiver in the country, Marvin Harrison Jr., future top 5 draft pick, maybe top 5. At least top 10 draft pick, dominant wide receiver, has 604 yards, 31 receptions, 5 touchdowns this season. Beyond that, they have Egbuka, Julian Fleming. It kind of tapers off a little bit more in terms of their production after that. But this is a room full of high 4-star and 5-star talent from top to bottom. Penn State, good wide receiver room, not a great wide receiver room. Is there really any discussions we need to have about who has the edge here? I mean, I think this is a pretty overwhelming edge for Ohio State, even if Egbuka is out.
Yeah, no. Ohio State's wide receiver room could be Marvin Harrison and the 3 of us, and it would still be a better wide receiver room.
Yeah.
Like, Marvin Harrison is going to be a top 5 draft pick for a reason. Not having Egbuka is a huge sticking point in this game to me.
Could be a game changer.
It could be a game changer.
And even if he plays, how effective is he going to be? I think it's a knee injury he is working his way back from. Is he going to be hobbled? Is he going to be full speed? I mean, that injury may be what decides this game.
Yeah, because it allows Penn State to focus more on Marvin Harrison. Obviously, Ohio State still has other weapons, but Egbuka in his own right is a wide receiver 1. He might be the second best receiver in the country potentially. When you break it down, like, he's a guy that's also going to go in the first round of the draft.
Yeah.
So, that is a big deal from a scheme and defensive standpoint for Penn State. But yeah, Ohio State, we'll save them some time. The listeners, Ohio State's room is better.
And we'll talk about how Penn State's DBs match up against Ohio State's wide receivers later, and vice versa for Ohio State. We'll talk about some key playmakers there. But yeah, I mean, Marty, do you have anything to add Okay. Well, I'll start with you then on the tight ends, Marty, because I think this is another position that's kind of a toss-up. Now, I think Penn State has the better tight end room overall, but Cade Stover has been damn good for Ohio State this year. 23 receptions, 359, 3 touchdowns, and this is a guy who had a major impact in the game last season. Had a late touchdown, and that went for Ohio State last year. He may be the best performing tight end coming to this game, but do you give the edge to Penn State for having the better tight end room top to bottom? How do you see this?
I top to bottom, yes. I think Penn State is the better tight end room, but again, it's similar to running back, where the tight ends really have disappointed this year, especially Theo. I shouldn't say the tight ends have disappointed. Tyler Warren has been terrific. Theo Johnson has really disappointed. That said, last week, yes, it was UMass, but for the first time all year, Theo Johnson looked like the Theo Johnson we saw last year. And I think an area Penn State could really exploit Ohio State's defense in this game is those seam routes with Theo Johnson against Ohio State's linebackers. But that said, Cade Stover to me is the best tight end in this game. I'm going to give Ohio State the edge there for that reason. He's the guy that really scares me. I think they will do a good job of containing Marvin Harrison Jr. But Stover's the guy where on 3rd and 9 and McCord, it looks like the play's going to fall apart and he dumps off to him when he gets 11 and moves the chains, right? But, again, I think top to bottom, Penn State is the best tight end room. And some of that is because of guys like Khalil Dinkins and Andrew Rappleyea, who are further down the depth chart, who are better than tight end 3 and 4 for Ohio State. But for Saturday, I will give a slight edge to Ohio State just because we know Cade Stover is a consistent weapon. Theo Johnson, can he be that consistent weapon? We don't know. But, man, again, I think Johnson could have a huge game on Saturday against these linebackers if that's a route Penn State wants to go.
And it's worth noting, if Penn State, I'm assuming in this game is going to be playing a lot of nickel defense, considering Ohio State's offense. Ohio State's going to get a lot of wide receivers out there quite a bit, and obviously just based off what we've seen the Buckeyes do in the past. And with that, kind of skipping to linebackers just quickly, I don't think we're going to see a ton of Tyler Elsdon, and I don't think we're going to see like a ton of Kobe King and Dominic DeLuca. We'll see King a little bit. We'll see Elsdon a little bit, but I expect King to have a decent role, but I don't expect Elsdon and DeLuca to have major roles in this game. They'll get their snaps probably more in rushing situations for Ohio State than anything. But if you're Penn State, your two best linebackers this year, Curtis Jacobs, Abdul Carter, have been good in coverage. Carter this year has allowed 2 receptions on 7 targets for 23 yards. And then Curtis Jacobs, 4 receptions on 6 targets for just 7 yards. So you have to feel good about how those two possibly match up against Stover in this situation, no? Yep.
Yeah. No, I think Stover to me is the X factor for Ohio State offensively. Sure. I mean, you know about Harrison, you know about Henderson, you know about Egbuka if he's healthy, of course, but Stover is kind of like the guy that comes in every game and makes a couple of big plays here and there, but never really steals the spotlight. Those guys are dangerous. So, Penn State does have the guys to account for him. Like Jacobs and Carter, like you said, are both athletic enough and solid enough in coverage to be able to hang with him. So not overly concerned, but yeah, it is something you have to keep in mind. It is something that has to be factored in. And yeah, like Marty said, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a guy 3rd and 9, he gets them 11, moves the chains on a big touchdown drive. It's going to be important that they account for him. So overall, I think Penn State's tight end room is better. I think it's deeper. There's no doubt about it. They're legitimately 4 deep at the tight end room. I don't really know who Ohio State's backup tight ends are. I'm sure they're solid because all of Ohio State's players are. But yeah, I think Stover as of right now is the best tight end going into this game. So you can call it a toss-up. It really is just kind of a question of what do you prefer, having the all-around better player on the field, or Penn State having, the deepest room on the field.
Sure. Backup tight ends you talk about for Ohio State. I might as well give them to you. G. Scott Jr., who some may remember his recruitment, not that Penn State was involved there for an extent for anything. But He was a big name coming out of high school. They also have Mitch Rossi and Joe Royer. In terms of target, it is going to be Scott Jr., who's likely that next option, but he has just 7 targets this year. Cade Stover has 48. If a tight end is going to make a play on Saturday for Ohio State, it's probably going to be Stover. I agree with you guys. I would give Ohio State the edge at tight end just because of Stover, and I agree with you, Anthony. I think he is the guy who, even if Emeka Egbuka plays this game, I think Stover is the one that has a chance to be the true X factor in this game. Like we said, he made a big play at the end of last year's game that kind of decided that one. Penn State's going to try to lock down Marvin Harrison Jr. in this game. You cannot stop Harrison Jr. completely. You can only hope to slow him down. If Penn State slows him down, I'm sure they're going to look at Cade Stover to make some big plays late. Let's move to the offensive line, which I was off on the targets. Stover has 29 targets this year. Scott Jr. has 5. I was looking at last year's stats, my bad. But not that changes much. Going back to the offensive line here, Ohio State's offensive line this year, depending who you ask, hasn't been great. It hasn't been great, hasn't been terrible. There's definitely some holes on this Ohio State offensive line. The last few weeks, they haven't looked great. But overall, it does appear that the right side of the Ohio State offensive line has been solid this year. That would be offensive tackle Josh Fryer, as well as offensive right guard Matthew Jones. However, with the Ohio State's offensive line, when you start working from the center to the left, it becomes a little bit of a bigger question mark in center Carson Hintzman, Donovan Jackson at guard, and Josh Simmons at tackle. Those 3 this year have allowed 24 pressures on Kyle McCord on the right side, and Jones and Fryer just 7 this season. If Penn State's going to attack somewhere, it's going to be that center to the left. Also, McCord's blind side, which is going to be something to note. And I will say, I don't think Ohio State's offensive line has faced a defense that can expose that offensive line like the Nittany Lions will be able to this weekend, at least on paper. On the other side, Penn State's offensive line this year, I don't know if you could have asked for much better through the first 7 games of the season. You look at it overall, Penn State's offensive line has allowed just 36 pressures per game, which comes out to just about 6 pressures a game. Sacks-wise, Drew has only gone to the ground, I think, 3-4 times this season. I mean, I think you have to give Penn State's offensive line, for maybe the first time in this series in a long time, the edge in this one. I know that's where I'm leaning. Marty, which way would you lean here?
Yeah, I'm with you. It's a slight edge, but I go Penn State. And the main reason I'm going to go Penn State's offensive line is, to me, Ohio State might have a slight edge in the interior.
Sure.
But even then, I don't know, because I think Hunter Norzad is the best center in this game. That
Yes.
said, I think Penn State has a substantial edge at offensive tackle. An offensive tackle is much better than the interior offensive line. You can ask any football coach in the country. If their options are have a strong interior offensive line and weak tackles, or strong tackles and a weak interior offensive line, you're taking the strong tackles every single time. Olu Fashanu might be the best offensive tackle in college football. Caden Wallace has really quietly had a really strong season. Has probably played himself into being a late-round draft pick, to his credit, after everything he's been through in his career.
He may be the most improved player on the entire team.
Yeah, I think from week 1 to now, or at least from the end of last season to now, Wallace is probably him or Hunter Norzad as well running the offensive line. It's probably one of those two. So, yeah, it's not a huge advantage, but I think Penn State has the better offensive line. And to me, like I said, a lot of that is a tackle play. And it's not just, Caden Wallace and Olu. Because last year, if you remember correctly, Olu getting hurt, low-key played a huge role in the game. And this year, God forbid that happens again, Drew Shelton is pretty...
Yeah, I think Penn State is well positioned to not be in a total disaster. Now, if somebody goes down, if Olu would go down, it would be potentially game changing, but it wouldn't be panic time just yet.
Because when that happened last year, Caden Wallace swung to left tackle. Bryce Effner went in at right tackle. And Bryce Effner, no knock on him. He played well above his rating coming out of high school throughout his
Yep.
career. Played an important role down the stretch last year through the Rose Bowl. But JTT just ate Effner's lunch at that point. And like I said, at this point, God forbid something like that would happen on Saturday. You're going to feel comfortable with Drew Shelton out there. So largely due to the offensive tackles as well as Penn State having the advantage center, in my opinion. Give me the Nittany Lions having the best offensive line in this game.
Anthony, which offensive line you given the advantage to here?
I'm with you guys. I think Penn State holds the advantage on the offensive line front, mostly because of the tackles. I don't think Ohio State's. I think their right tackle is pretty solid. I think it's the left side of that line, like you said, that is the concerning point if you're Ohio State. And I really think that matchup of the tackles versus our defensive ends has the potential to be the difference in this one. And we'll get into defensive ends in a second because it's a really good conversation. But I think that, you have Olu Fashanu, like you said, he's the best, potentially the best offensive tackle in college football. At worst, he's the second best, but I would rate him the best in my opinion.
Sure.
I'm a little biased, but
maybe just a little.
So I think that Caden Wallace has been really, really solid, and he's quietly been really solid. So, you go into this game with a little bit of confidence there from that standpoint that they can hold back this Ohio State defensive edge rush a little bit, which is something that they weren't able to do last year for reasons that you guys already explained. So, yeah, give me the Nittany Lions in this one along the offensive front. And, yeah, we'll see if that matchup ends up being the difference.
Marty kind of talked about the interior there, so let's kind of skip to the interior defensive line spot here, because if there is a spot on defense that I think Ohio State has the edge in, it is probably that interior spot. Penn State's interior this year on defense, I think has been good, but we haven't really seen them been tested since that West Virginia game. We're not really sure what to expect them against a quality opponent. Now, that being said, like we said, Ohio State's one weakness on the offensive line, one of them is the center, Carson Hinsman. He has not been very good in the pass blocking. His run blocking has been slightly better, but it's not like he's a grinder out there who's going to open up hole after hole for this rushing attack. That being said, I still think I would probably lean Ohio State here in the interior. Tyleik Williams has been one of the best defensive tackles in the country so far this season. He's great against the run and also is a very good pass rusher for an interior defensive lineman as well. Ty Hamilton has been solid. And they have guys beyond that who have shown flashes, but it's going to be mostly those two in Williams and Hamilton. And I guess also, of course, Michael Hall Jr., who is probably more of a pass rushing specialist from the inside than a rush, run defense guy. But you got three guys there for Ohio State that can realistically, provide some trouble for Penn State's offensive line in this game. You flip this, the other side for Penn State. I think you through 7 games will take what you've seen out of the likes of, Hakeem Beamon, Zane Durant, Devon Ellies, Jordan Vandenberg, Keziah Zard. But I'm not sure they have one of those guys. I think some of those guys for Ohio State may not be able to take over the game completely, but I can see them making some big-time plays. I'm not sure that I see a guy on this Penn State defensive tackle room right now that can make that game-changing play. Maybe Zane Durant, but I think I would give the edge to Ohio State here. Maybe a little bit more than a little bit, but I don't think it's a huge advantage, but it's a notable advantage for Ohio State, if that makes sense. Whoever wants to go first on this one.
I'll take it. Yeah, I agree. Advantage Buckeyes on the interior defensive line. Tyleik Williams is one of the best defensive tackles in the country. As much as this group for Penn State has held their own so far this year, they haven't had a game record, which you don't necessarily have to have a game record.
But it helps.
you just, yeah, it helps for sure. You just need guys that can, hold up and not get pushed back. So as long as you do
Yeah.
that this weekend, I'm fine with it. But yeah, give me, if I'm comparing the two, give me Ohio State's defensive tackles.
Marty, who are you giving the advantage to in the interior there?
Yeah, again, I'm with Anthony. It's definitely Ohio State, but one thing I will note on this is while I think Ohio State is the better defensive tackle group of the two, I think, again, I touched on this. I think Penn State's interior offensive line, it may not be as strong as Ohio State's, but I think that center position is key here, right?
Sure.
I think having the better center of the group goes a long way here. So I do think the Buckeyes have an advantage at defensive tackle. Penn State having the overall advantage offensive line between the two groups, I think, kind of helps offset that some.
Sure. It's what I think would be interesting. Just kind of notice the stat off as we're looking at going to be on. Can't speak. One thing I haven't really noticed till now is neither of these teams defensively have been penalized a ton this season. Ohio State has just 10 penalties on defense. Penn State just 16. It will be interesting to see, which team comes out a little bit more disciplined in this one. The last few years, Penn State's kind of become undisciplined later in the games, and that's cost them. Will that be the case again this week? That'll be something to watch. But as we move away from the defensive tackles, I think the same can be said about the defensive end. Just flip flop it to Penn State. I think Penn State has a sizable advantage at the defensive end position. But I think at the same time, if you're a Penn State fan, if you're Penn State, you still have to respect the talent that is in this Ohio State defensive end room because it is legitimate elite talent. But the Buckeyes have not been getting to the quarterback the same way that the Nittany Lions have so far through 7 games. I mean, Penn State this season, I know pressure sacks are not all defensive ends, but as a defense, 157 pressures for Penn State through 6 games, 31 sacks this season already. You flip it the other side to Ohio State, 96 tackles, 11 sacks. There's a sizable advantage there for Penn State, but at the same time, I think you have to respect Ohio State's talent there. Elite talent often shows up in elite games. We saw that last year when I came into that game saying JT. I'm not even going to try it. I apologize, JT. Everybody knows who I'm talking about. JTT. He took over the game last year. When I said I didn't think Ohio State had a guy who can do that last year, I'm not going to say that this year because I think JTT can be that guy. But I think Penn State's offensive line is better equipped to handle that this season. Do either one of you disagree on Penn State having the edge at defensive end? And do you have any comments on this between the two defensive ends position groups?
I mean, I agree it's an advantage. I would argue Penn State's defensive end group is the best defensive end group in the country.
Yes.
I mean, Chop Robinson's going to be a first-round pick this April. Denai Dennis Sutton will be a first-round pick next April. Adiza Isaac, at worst, is going to be a top 100 pick this April, and that doesn't even account for what Van Over and Zariah Fisher can give you off the bench. I do think, though, that there's I think it's a pretty significant gap. I really do. I think if Penn State wins on Saturday, I think we're going to look back on it and say, man, the defensive ends just took this game over. Very similar to 2016 when in the second half, Garrett Sickles and Sharif Miller and Evan Schwan took that game over.
Yeah.
I think we could see a very similar outcome this Saturday, especially, again, these Ohio State offensive tackles are not what you expect for Ohio State offensive tackles.
Especially that left side.
Yeah, and even against Josh Fryer, I'm sorry. I've seen offensive tackles who are a lot better than him struggle with Chop Robinson.
Sure.
I think Penn State's defensive ends are substantially better than Ohio State's. And, you mentioned the JTT game last year, and how many times in this series over the last few years, in the end, did it come down to the fact Ohio State had that game wrecker on the edge that Penn State didn't? Rather it was Chase Young, rather it was JTT, whoever it was. And
Bosa's.
Yeah, the Bosa brothers. Yeah, really going back with Franklin's first game against Ohio State and that whiteout in 2014 where, I mean, without incompetent officiating, they win, but also, Bosa didn't help. But yeah, like this is so many times in this series we've seen Ohio State win a tight game because they had the edge rusher who took over
Yeah.
the fourth quarter. I think this year Penn State has those edge rushers, whether it's Chop, or whether it's Disa, whether it's DDS, whoever it is, to take over in the fourth quarter. I think it's a pretty, no disrespect to JTT, who's going to be a first-round pick. I think there's a group as a whole, I think there's a pretty big gap between Penn State's defensive ends and Ohio State's.
Yeah, and I think what really makes it, even a bigger edge for Penn State is Penn State has 4 or 5 defensive ends that they trust can get after the quarterback any given pass rush. I think Ohio State may have 2 or 3, but I mean having those 1 or 2 extra guys can make all the difference in the world. Anthony, thoughts on the defensive end groups? Agree with us? Advantage Penn State?
Yes, I 100% agree. Advantage Penn State. Like Marty said, I think, forget just in this game, like this defensive end room might be the best defensive end room in the country.
Sure.
We are legitimately 5 deep at defensive end. And not just from the standpoint of having a deep room and you think each guy can get after the quarterback. I don't necessarily think that Amin Vanover and Zariah Fish, as much as I'm very high on them, I don't necessarily expect them to take over a game against Ohio State. I think Chop, Isaac, and DDS can. But at the same time, having those guys that can rotate in throughout the course of the game and hold their own keeps Chop and Isaac and DDS fresh going into the stretch run of the fourth quarter when you need them to be able to pin their ears back and go after McCord in what's most likely going to be a tight game. And that goes back to the depth that we talked about earlier and why they basically fell apart in 2017 was the drop off from that first string to the second string was significant. It is no longer significant, especially in the defensive end room. So I think that, that has the chance to be a huge difference maker in this game. And that's why I said earlier on this podcast that the edge rushers versus Ohio State's offensive tackles, to me, is the matchup to watch in this one. So, advantage Penn State, as much as I think Ohio State's defensive end room is also really good. I think Penn State's is that much better.
And I think the other thing to note here is that Penn State's defensive ends, especially Denai Dennis Sutton, Disa Isaac, Chop Robinson, have been fantastic against the run this year for the most part. Ohio State's going to look to get the ball to the outside on the run quite a bit. I'm sure they'll try to attack the middle of the defense as well because, let's be honest, I mean, Abdul Carter this year has not been great against the run. He's going to be on the field a ton. The defensive tackles have been solid so far, but again, this is a defensive tackle room that really hasn't been tested since week 1 against West Virginia. We know what West Virginia was able to do. I don't think Ohio State's going to have the same level of success, but I wouldn't be surprised if Ohio State does have some success there. But if you're Penn State and the defensive ends can help set that edge and keep the running game for Ohio State more in between the hash marks, that is going to advantage, I think, Penn State as well on the defensive side of the ball. Marty?
No, I was just going to say 2 things. First, Dylan, your comment made me think of this. Go back to mentioning the West Virginia game. I agree they haven't been tested like that since the West Virginia game, but West Virginia's offensive line was also better than Ohio State's, and I think by a lot, especially on the interior. And the other thing I was going to mention, Anthony mentioned the fresh legs at defensive end, and you go back to the last time Penn State beat Ohio State in 2016. What was maybe the most key, as weird as it sounds, maybe the most key factor in that game was Garrett Sickles being suspended for the first half, because in the second half when he had those fresh legs, and Isaiah Prince in the group for Ohio State just couldn't block him. That's where having that depth is so important because, I mean, obviously Chop Robinson, Denai Dennis Sutton, and these Isaac, they're going to play throughout the first half. But whenever you can let Fisher and Vanover each get 15, 16, 17 reps per game, or their quality reps where they're going to hold their own, that's when you get to the fourth quarter and you can have Chop and Adisa and Denai Dennis Sutton having fresher legs than those offensive tackles or the offensive interior whenever you see one of them bump inside on third down. And that can be just absolutely crucial in a game like this.
I 100% agree with you on that one. Let's move to linebacker. Anthony had to jump out for a little bit, but he may be back before we're done. That being said, linebacker Marty here. What is your overall thoughts on this? I think this is again advantage Penn State. They have the better, more athletic linebackers in this one. Curtis Jacobs, Abdul Carter are both guys who can go in the top 2 rounds of the NFL draft when they're coming out. Abdul Carter could very well be a first-round pick. We'll see what Curtis Jacobs ends up. I think he can sneak into being a high second-round pick or maybe even back into the first-round pick, depending on how he performs at the combine. That being said, this Ohio State linebacker room is a very, very good linebacker room overall. Steel Chambers, Tommy Eichenberg, someone James Franklin said he had a coach crush on this week because of just how intelligent of a football player is, how just fundamentally strong he is. He's a very good linebacker, top to bottom. Steel Chambers, like I mentioned as well. And they have a few other guys out there. Kenyatta Jackson, Cody Simon are the other two main ones. Maybe we see a little bit of C.J. Hicks, but probably not. Penn State probably doesn't have. I don't know how I feel about Penn State's top 4 linebackers compared to those 4. You throw Kobe King in there. I feel good about what Kobe King can do. Maybe Ohio State has the advantage on that 4th guy, but I think Penn State has the advantage when it comes to Abdul Carter and Curtis Jacobs against Steel Chambers and Tommy Eichenberg. Not the biggest one, but I think they have the advantage there, and that's why I think I'm going to go Penn State for the advantage at linebacker. Plus, we mentioned how good Penn State's linebackers have been good in coverage this year. Tommy Eichenberg, Steel Chambers haven't been terrible, but they are allowing a high percentage of passes to be completed this year. If I can bring it up here quickly. I'll bring up the stats. I lost it quickly, but what's your analysis of that?
Yeah, I'm with you. Give me Penn State a linebacker. I mean, I think Abdul Carter is the best linebacker in this game. I think Curtis Jacobs is the second best linebacker in this game. So at that point, I think it's pretty minuscule. You kind of get that feeling with Abdul Carter. You came into the year with such high expectations for him. He has played better than a lot of people have given him credit for.
But it's been quiet.
Yes, the stats haven't always been there, but some of that is because he hasn't had to play a ton of reps because Penn State's been bludgeoning everybody.
Yeah.
But he's been all over the field, but you get the feeling, man, he's due. He's due for one of those games where you look up at the end of the game and it's like a sack, a forced fumble, 2 or 3 quarterback hurries, a pass break. Like, you just get the feeling he's due, for one of those games where that elite talent shines through. Curtis Jacobs, to me, overall, top to bottom, the 2 best players in this defense this year have been Curtis Jacobs and Adiza Isaac.
Yeah.
We're chopping the discussion as well. So, I think Penn State has the advantage at linebacker. I get what you're saying on the depth potentially, but to me, Abdul Carter and Curtis Jacobs are the 2 best linebackers in this game. They're 2 potential game changers at linebacker, which I don't think Ohio State has. So linebacker, I'm going to give the advantage to Penn State.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're Penn State, you're going to play mostly just Curtis Jacobs and Abdul Carter in this game. You're going to have a little bit of Kobe King, a little bit of Tyler Alston, maybe a little bit of Dominic DeLuca, but you're not going to have a ton of those 3 guys. Kobe King a little bit more than the others, but it's going to mostly be a 2-man show. By the way, Steel Chambers has allowed 18 receptions on 20 targets this year for 127 yards. Tommy Eichenberg, 9 for 11, 77 yards allowed. The yards numbers are solid for the amount of receptions, but they're giving up receptions more so than they're not. And against Penn State's tight end room, which has the physicality to break tackles, that can be a matchup that Penn State takes advantage of. Do we see the Nittany Lions attack the seams a bit this weekend? I think it's quite possible. Anthony, you're back. With that, which side do you give them the advantage to at linebacker?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting debate just because I think Penn State has the better high-end talents with Curtis Jacobs and Abdul Carter. I think Ohio State has the better overall linebacker room, top to bottom.
Would it be safer to say that? Not safer. Would it be bold to say that Ohio State's linebacker room may be a little bit more safe? Like, I think if there's going to be a linebacker room that sticks to their game, doesn't get caught out of position somewhere trying to make a big play, it's probably Ohio State's compared to Penn State's, where Abdul Carter, Curtis Jacobs or more of your aggressive type linebackers, if they try to make a big play and miss, that could end up, costing any lines. I feel Ohio State's linebackers may be a little bit more sound to their game, not trying to do too much, if that makes sense.
I get what you're saying, although I think Curtis Jacobs has been consistently
Yes.
really good
Yes.
all season.
Yes.
So not so much worried about Jacobs. I could see Carter in that situation just because Carter is
he's aggressive at times. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's also, he'll miss a tackle from time
Yep.
to time. Or, I see what you're saying, and the rest of the guys in that room, obviously there is quite a bit of a drop off. Although I am pretty high on Kobe King.
Yeah.
I think that's probably one of the linebacker room is probably one of the biggest drop offs from the first string to the second string, just because that first string talent is so good.
Yeah.
Right now at linebacker. But yeah, I do agree with you that Ohio State's room is probably less likely to cause a back-breaking play defensively.
Yeah.
So,
but they're also, I think, less likely to cause, that
a game-wrecking
play. So, I mean,
which is why personally I might lean that it's kind of a toss-up, but
sure.
Yeah, if I'm taking the first string, I'm taking Penn State's first string. But if I'm taking the overall room, I'm taking Ohio State's.
I think that's a really fair way to put it. I think that's I probably lean slightly Penn State, but I think it's all going to depend too how much is Penn State's defense on the field. If Penn State's defense dominates like they have, Abdul Carter, Curtis Jacobs aren't going to be on the field a ton, and if Penn State's offense can stay on the field, which they've done a great job of doing this season, that's going to be an advantage for Penn State. But if the offense struggles to stay on the field, I wonder if not having maybe that depth to a degree is going to end up hurting Penn State a little bit, but I'd still give the edge a little bit to Penn State. Let's move to the secondary. As a whole, I think Penn State obviously has the advantage here. Does anybody disagree?
No, I think Penn State's a better secondary, yeah.
All right. Well, that was easy. And I think Penn State has the advantage both at corner and at safety. At safety, Ohio State has Sonny Styles, Lathan Ransom, who's been good this year, and then at cornerback you're looking at Davison Igo-Binnison, and as well as Denzel Burke, who we mentioned is banged up coming in this week. We'll see how much he plays. Jordan Hancock and Jermaine Matthews. Sorry, not Jermaine Matthews. Only played 3 games here. Jordan Hancock is the other major name to know there. Josh Proctor at safety as well. When it comes to Penn State's matchup against Ohio State's wide receivers, gentlemen, how do we feel about this matchup for Penn State? I think, like we said, you can't stop Marvin Harrison Jr. completely, but you can only hope to slow him down. I don't think Penn State's going to match up Kalen King on Harrison Jr. throughout this game. That's never been their style. I think there will be times when they're matched up, but I think we're going to see also a lot of for Penn State, a lot of Kalen King, a lot of Johnny Dixon in this game on Harrison Jr. as well. Maybe even a little bit of Cam Miller. I think that would be a little bit bold, but I wouldn't be surprised if Miller ends up on Harrison Jr. once or twice in this game. If you look back at last year, Harrison Jr. is covered by quite a few guys. Anthony, I'll start with you on this one. Just how do you feel about this matchup?
Yeah, I think, it's kind of similar to last year where you thought that you'd see a lot of Joey Porter Jr. on Marvin Harrison, and you really didn't see a lot of it. He had him for a couple of snaps here and there, but for the most part, it was kind of just, maybe it was just Ohio State scheming Marvin Harrison open as best as they could. But you didn't see that prime matchup as much as you thought you would. And I think you'll kind of get the same thing this year.
Sure.
I think they're going to try their best to get Marvin Harrison on either Johnny Dixon or Cam Miller as much as they possibly can, or even Daquan Hardy if they put him in the slot. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of having a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. You can literally play him anywhere.
Sure.
So hope I'm sure the staff will be more prepared for that. But at the same time, yeah, it's a situation with Harrison. You just, like you said, you just gotta hope you can slow him down, because you're not going to stop him. You're not going to fully hold him to 2 catches for 20 yards. It's just not going to happen. He's too good. So, we'll see. We'll see. But yeah,
Would you feel confident with Johnny Dixon on Marvin Harrison Jr.?
I think he can hold his own. I mean, I don't know if he can do it consistently, as much as I'm very high on Johnny Dixon, but I think he can definitely hold his own. I mean, he's very talented. He's another guy who's made significant leaps and bounds from where he was last year. He almost looks like a completely different player at times, and he
Sure.
kind of plays with the swagger of a guy that knows he's really, really good, and kind of the swagger of a guy who knows he's disrespected as well. He kind of has a chip on his shoulder all the time because, Kalen King obviously gets the national acclaim for good reason. He's really, really good. He's probably going to be a first-round pick. But, Johnny Dixon rarely gets talked about in those conversations for guys that are some of the best corners in the country, and I think he sees that.
Legitimate NFL talent.
Yeah, I think he sees that, and I think he answers the bell every week of okay, I'm going to show you how good I am. Throw the ball at me. I think he wants the ball thrown at him.
Yeah,
and that's a really special trait for a corner, to want the ball to be thrown in their direction.
Sure. Passing it to Marty here, and Marty, I asked about Johnny Dixon and Anthony. I don't think Cam Miller is going to end up on Marvin Harrison Jr. probably at all, but maybe he gets him once or twice. But not that. That's not my question. My question is, Cam Miller is going to have a good game on Saturday, no matter who he's on. Are you confident that he can stop a Julian Fleming, an Emeka Egbuka, or whoever he may end up lined up across from? Or slow down at least?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I get what you're saying, but I don't know how much of Cam Miller we wind up seeing in this game. I think.
Yeah.
I think we will, because we saw last week Penn State go a lot of four corner for the first time this year.
Sure.
I think some of that was in anticipation for this week. But I think Penn State, in an ideal scenario, you're hoping you can roll with your main three, Hardy in the slot, and then match up with safeties from there. And I will say with Marvin Harrison Jr., one thing to watch is in third down or in have to have a passing situation. So Ohio State loves to put him in the slot.
Yeah.
And as someone who, as you guys know, is people who follow me on Twitter know, people who listen to the podcast know, I think extremely highly of Daquan Hardy. And this could be a big test for Hardy on Saturday, because I think he's going to get matched up with Marvin Harrison Jr. more than people are anticipating. Because like you guys said, Penn State's style is not to move corners around to shadow receivers. You're going to play the nickel, you're going to play boundary, you're going to play field. They don't care. They don't care what receivers are where. They're going to play their guys at their position, which I'm perfectly fine with. So Harrison Jr., it's going to be a team effort to cover him. So on those third downs when he's in the slot, whether it's Hardy, maybe you bracket him with a guy like Jalen Reed. Again, this word to me, it circles back to it. Emeka Egbuka's health could be the key to this entire game. Because if Emeka Egbuka doesn't play, or Emeka Egbuka is not 100% or close to it, which I mean, if he does play, I don't think he's going to be close to 100%. That changes everything. Because if you go back and rewatch that Notre Dame game, which I did earlier this week, what Notre Dame did so well was bracketing the safety over the top, whatever they could to take Marvin Harrison Jr. away. And Emeka Egbuka bailed Ohio State out a lot. If Emeka Egbuka is not there to bail them out, and you can, again, like you said, you're not going to stop Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, for God's sake, the kid might never be better than his dad, and that's saying something.
Yeah.
You got to hope to contain him and slow him down. I think Penn State's more than capable of doing that, especially if Egbuka's out. Because if Egbuka's out and they can bracket Harrison Jr. with a corner teamed up with Jalen Reed or with another safety or safety over the top, however they want to do it, and you start getting this pass rush after Kyle McCord, and he doesn't have his safety net of Egbuka, especially if you can also keep an eye on Cade Stover. Ohio State's offense could be in some serious trouble. So, I think ultimately this all stems back to Egbuka potentially being the key to this game. But, yeah, it's going to be a group effort to slow down and cover Marvin Harrison Jr. on Saturday. You've got to go into this game accepting the fact Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to get some yards. What you can't have is a repeat of last year where he goes 10 for 190 or whatever it was and is just consistently beating you for chunk plays. If you can hold him to where it's just not one big chunk after another, you're going to feel good because you're not going to stop him. He is too good. He is in the discussion with Devonta Smith, the best college wide receiver I have ever seen. You are not going to stop him. You've just got to try and contain. And I think Penn State has the pieces to be able to contain, especially if they can get this pass rush going. If you get the pass rush going and you're terrorizing McCord, it doesn't matter if Harrison's wide open. I mean, there was plays against Maryland where Marvin Harrison Jr. was wide open, and Kyle McCord under pressure makes a horrible throw, and Harrison Jr. has to come back to the ball, and what should have been a touchdown turns into a 30 or 40-yard gain, which may not sound like much, and that's something you can get away with against Maryland. But in a game like this, having a would-be should-be touchdown turn into only a 30 or 35-yard gain could prove to be pretty substantial. So that will definitely be something to keep an eye on.
And just one last one on the DBs for you. Ohio State this year has thrown out a lot of 3 safety looks. Jim Knowles' specialty did a lot at Oklahoma State. He's doing a lot this year. You think the 3 safety looks are going to give a little bit of trouble for Drew early on, or you think Drew is going to be able to? Because this is a very good Ohio State secondary, one of the better ones we've seen in the last few years for the Buckeyes.
Yeah.
Any worries there?
One thing that is going to sound really weird on the surface till you dig a little deeper in what I'm going to say. Penn State playing Delaware makes me feel better about this because Delaware plays a 3 safety look.
It is a little funny. It is a little funny.
It's Delaware. The talent level couldn't be any different, but you don't see 3 safety looks very often.
You do not.
Who has seen a 3 safety look this year makes me feel better about it. I mean, there's no denying what Jim Knowles has done with this defense. I mean, when Manny Diaz was hired, I think there were a lot of Penn State fans who had Jim Knowles atop their wish list that offseason. And obviously, no one's going to complain about Manny Diaz. I would argue Manny Diaz. Hell, Manny Diaz and Jim Knowles might be the 2 best defensive coordinators, and they might be 1-2 for defense coordinators in the country right now. So that's going to be another wrinkle to watch in this game. But yeah, Knowles is a tremendous defensive coordinator. The 3 safety look is one you don't see a lot of. And again, I get it sounds stupid. I understand that because it's Delaware. But Drew has seen that this year, and I don't think it can be overstated how important that is, that this is not going to be the first time he has seen a 3 safety look as a base defense.
So, okay. The one thing I will say is that I think and we talked about this a little bit off air. I think Keandre Lambert Smith has a tendency to show up in big moments. He showed up last year against Ohio State, scored a big touchdown. He showed up against Utah in the Rose Bowl with the 88-yard touchdown. He showed up against Purdue with a huge touchdown in that game. He does have big moments. So it would not shock me at all if Keandre Lambert Smith had a big moment or 2 in this game. So from that standpoint, yes, I think they can. But at the same time, you haven't seen it from literally anybody else except maybe Harrison Wallace here and there. And even him, he's just been more consistent than explosive. So I mean, maybe those 2 guys can make a difference, but it is. 100%. Yeah, I mean, at this point, I think we know what this wide receiver room is. You have 2 guys that you can lean on to make plays, and then it's kind of just a turnstile of, okay, who's going to show up and maybe be that third guy for the week, if anybody. So knowing that, yeah, you have to get the running backs involved. You have to get the tight ends involved. And yeah, Harrison Wallace has been way more important than we expected him to be in this passing game, because he opens up KLS a little bit as well as those other guys. So yeah, I think like those two can absolutely make a difference against this Ohio State secondary. But yeah, it's kind of a crapshoot on the rest of that team.
I was muted on my side of the recording, but what I asked Anthony, everybody, was if I said that I thought the tight ends and running backs could have a impact in this game for Penn State. That could be the deciding factor for Penn State on the offense when it comes to moving the ball. And if he agreed, and apologize for that, but I asked that because if you look back at Ohio State's toughest game this year against Notre Dame, I think there's a lot that Penn State, and I'll go to Marty on this one. I think there's a lot, Marty, that Penn State could take from that Notre Dame game in how the Irish moved the ball through the air. It kind of fits into what Penn State's been doing this year. They're not looking for explosiveness; they're looking for efficiency. In that game against Notre Dame, Sam Hartman was 17 for 25, 175, and a touchdown. His best receiver on the day was tight end Mitchell Evans, 7 for 75. And that's why I think there's an avenue here for success for the tight ends for Penn State to take advantage of. And I think Notre Dame kind of gave Penn State a little bit of a blueprint of what to do against this Ohio State defense. It wasn't enough for Notre Dame to win that game. But I don't know about you. I would take Penn State's offense over Notre Dame's offense. I think Penn State could do a little bit more damage. But if you can take a little bit of what Notre Dame did successfully, I think Penn State has the talent, especially at quarterback, to build on that and have more success.
Yeah, like I said earlier, Notre Dame gave you that blueprint on how to beat this team. Penn State and Notre Dame are very similar, although in my opinion, I'm with you. I think that I would take the Penn State offense. I think the Penn State offense has more explosiveness. There's better athletes. There's more playmakers there than Notre Dame has. I also think, again, and it's not a knock on Sam Hartman because obviously he's had a tremendous college career. I think Drew Allar has more. There's just more talent there. There's more in that arm than Hartman brings to the table. And and it's funny. It's similar. If you ask a Notre Dame fan, they're going to tell you the biggest problem with that team is their wide receivers, because their wide receivers are not very good. And it's crazy as it is, I think the receivers are probably worse than Penn State, which again, Dylan, kind of builds off what you said, where Penn State has a little bit more of that talent. I think they have more athleticism on the outside than Notre Dame has. It feels like a game where if they're going to do this, if they're going to win on Saturday, I feel like they've got to get at least 2 or 3 chunk plays on offense, because I don't think they can sustain. I think they can have 1 or 2 of those 7, 8, 9, 10 play scoring drives, but I don't think they can do that 3 or 4 times like they're going to need to do to win. So I think you're going to have to get some chunk plays in there. Rather that's Nick Singleton running the ball, whether that's throwing to Singleton out of the backfield, Theo Johnson down the seams, whatever it may be. But your best bet is for Keandre Lambert-Smith, for Trey Wallace. Hell, maybe this week Dante Cephas finally steps up. Maybe one of these other receivers finally step up in that third receiver role. But it can be had, because I think. Again, I mentioned it back at the beginning of the show. I think Ohio State's secondary, specifically those corners, can be susceptible.
Yeah.
And especially if Denzel Burke does not play, which just who knows. And if he does play, he's probably not 100%. I think the Notre Dame thing is a good point. As I said, I think the Fighting Irish kind of laid out the blueprint of what you got to do to beat this Ohio State team. We'll see what happens, but I'm not going to expect it to happen at all, but I'm also not going to be shocked if we look up at the box score on Saturday afternoon and see that Keandre Lambert-Smith went off for something like 7 catches for like 130 and 2 scores. And I think if that does happen, I will say if something like that does happen, where Keandre Lambert-Smith or a Trey Wallace just pop off for a big game for 100-plus yards and a couple of scores, I do think Penn State definitely wins this game then.
Do you think Penn State needs a performance like that from somebody to win this game? And Anthony, if you have a response to that one too.
I don't know if they need a performance like that, but they need a performance where the receivers are consistently catching the football, getting separation, and running good routes.
So probably along the line, they need somebody to probably have one of those 7 for 75 games, and they probably need somebody to not be too far behind that as well.
Yeah, I think between Theo, Trey Wallace, and KLS. I know Theo's a tight end, but you got to put him with the receivers. I feel like if between those three you can finish somewhere in like the I don't know 12 to 15, 16
Yeah,
catch range, you're probably feeling good about where this offense is trending on Saturday.
sure. All right, final position by position breakdown. We'll just kind of group special teams as a whole together. This probably could be given a toss-up. I may lean Penn State just because what we saw of Daquan Hardy last week, I think could be something to watch. I don't think he's returning one for a touchdown, but maybe he gets a big return. The punters are pretty comparable. The kicking games are pretty comparable. This is going to be interesting to watch. I mean, it is worth noting Jaden Fielding, the kicker for Ohio State, long of his career and this season is just 41 yards. Ohio State, hasn't allowed him to kick beyond 41 this year. So I'll be very interested to see how he does if Ohio State, gives him an opportunity to kick 45, 50 plus yards. Who are you guys giving the edge to here? I think I'd go probably toss up.
Yeah, I'd say toss up, but I will say one thing that makes me feel better about this is the last couple of weeks of them ditching the Aussie style punting with Riley Thompson and letting him just punt traditionally has made a world of difference in this punting game because for the first 4 games or so, Riley Thompson's punting was a legitimate problem. He was averaging less than 40 yards per punt, but the last couple of weeks, them just saying screw it, let's just punt this regularly has made a world of difference, and I think that could low-key be a big story on Saturday because this is a game where field position could be massive. You can't be going out there averaging 38 yards a punt. So the fact that they seem to have gotten the punting game fixed, I think, is big.
Anthony?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's pretty much a toss-up. I think we've talked about Falcons a lot. The fact that he stepped up, he's made some big kicks, 45, 46 yards, and he's drilled them with ease. Makes you feel a little more comfortable about this kicking game. And I think Marty made a great point about the punting. Riley Thompson caught a huge break in that Iowa game when it bounced off that guy's back for the Iowa. Bounced off the Iowa player's back because that was a bad punt. And he just so happened to luck into one there. But yeah, he's been a lot more consistent since, although he hasn't had to punt much since at the same time. But I think it's also made a difference. So yeah, I think overall it's pretty much a toss-up as long as nobody blocks a punt or one doesn't get shanked or no one misses a kick. It shouldn't make or break anything in terms of the positional battle on both sides. Obviously, special teams can always make or break your game depending on what happens in it. But I think it's pretty equal on both sides in terms of that. It just depends on who shows up and who doesn't.
Yeah, I was gonna say, to be fair, you basically said if nobody messes up, it's even. But if somebody messes up,
that's what I meant. Yeah, to make a long story short, if nobody messes up, it's fairly even. But obviously, special teams, you always hold your breath when it comes down to special teams, and this game could very well come down to special teams.
Yeah, I mean we've seen plenty of not just Penn State. We've seen plenty of top teams lose because they missed a field goal at some point across the.
Look at Oregon last week. Oregon had a chance to tie it against Washington, and he misses the kick, and now Washington controls their own destiny.
All right, final question before we get into our predictions. Something we didn't talk about with the quarterbacks. Drew Allar returns home to Ohio for his first career start against the Buckeyes, and probably his only start in the horseshoe. Do you think that we've talked a lot about his career so far, and James Franklin has as well, about the composure and poise he has, and he's always risen to the moments when he's been asked to. Is the stage going to be too big for Allar on Saturday? Do you think there's any maybe first couple drive jitters, or do you think this is the type of quarterback that goes into that game and isn't bothered by the environment? Marty, I guess start with you and then go to Anthony.
I mean, Drew has never really given us any reason to believe he's going to be truly bothered by the environment. I mean, I know the narrative's out there. The three of us talked about this at your wedding, Dylan, after the Northwestern game, how the narrative was going to be there about Drew Allar on the road, and people were just going to look at the numbers and overlook, the drops, overlook receivers falling coming out of breaks.
Yeah.
Overlook Johnny Newton trying to, nearly kill Drew Allar every play.
Yeah.
But that said, this is big. This is the first true road test for him. He's going back home to Ohio, like you said.
One of the toughest places to play in the country.
Yeah, I will say I'm not going to be surprised if the Drew Allar turnover-free streak finally ends on Saturday.
Yeah.
But as weird as it sounds, it might not be the end of the world for him to have an early turnover. Let him finally face that adversity.
Yeah.
And give him the opportunity to bounce back. Because I almost wonder, there definitely have been times this year that Yurcich has dialed up deep shots that Allar hasn't thrown.
Yep.
I wonder, in the psychology of football, if he makes that first mistake and then bounces back from it, does he kind of take that deep breath and say, you know what, if I try and make a big play and something goes wrong, it's okay. We'll bounce back from it. Does that maybe make him a little less gun shy to try some of those deeper throws and stuff? I don't know, but yeah, I think it'd be foolish not. It's like any quarterback coming into the whiteout. You're never going to say, oh man, they're not going to be fazed by this. We've seen some very talented, very veteran. Look at JT Barrett in the 2016 whiteout. We have seen a lot of very grizzled, veteran, seasoned quarterbacks struggle in that environment. The horseshoe's not that environment, but it's still one of the best environments in the country. So I mean, I'm sure Drew's going to have some moments where he's going to look rattled because he's going to be. And like I said, I won't be surprised to see him finally turn the ball over on Saturday. But I also don't think that's the end of the world. I think there could be some positives that could come from it.
And yeah, I have another kind of point I want to make quickly. But Anthony, any concerns about Drew heading into the biggest start of his career in the most hostile environment that he's going to maybe ever face?
I mean, I think I could see a reality where he's a little juiced up to start the game, but I think we've also seen that Drew, in pretty much every game we've ever seen him in, has pretty much been cool, calm, and collected in pretty much every situation.
Yeah.
It's obviously a little different when you go back home. He's probably going to be playing in front of a lot of people that he knows from his childhood, friends, family, etc. So, yeah, I'm sure that it's going to be in the back of his mind, but he also seems like the type of quarterback that's just always locked in on the game.
Yep.
It never gets too high, never gets too low, and I think you're going to see that again this weekend. It takes a lot of balls as a quarterback to step in a hostile environment against Purdue, even if it was only for a drive, and just start ripping it and complete passes the way that he did. That takes moxie, and I think you're going to see something similar this weekend. Maybe the first couple of throws, he misses a little bit, but he'll eventually settle in, and once he settles in, I think he'll be fine. So no, I'm not overly concerned about it. And I kind of agree with Marty that maybe if he does have that first turnover, as much as I don't want him to turn the ball over, like as much as if he did do it,
it's not going to be the end of the world.
Maybe it it's not the end of the world. You have, as long as it's not a pick six or anything, you have a chance to bounce back from it, and maybe he kind of settles in a little more because like, okay, I got the first one out of the way. Now I can, subconsciously just let that go and just start ripping it.
And I think the other thing to add is, and I'm surprised they haven't taken more deep shots, is this defense is just so damn good. I mean, if you have a turnover, as long as it's not a pick six and as long as it's not, deep on Ohio State side of the territory, it's not necessarily, going to result in points. I mean, we don't know what this defense looks like really coming off turnovers because there hasn't been that many this year. But I agree that it's not going to be the end of the world unless it's, a pick six, a fumble, which Ohio State's got in the last few years.
To build off that real quick, Dylan.
Yeah.
I understand it's against Northwestern, but the one time all year this defense has been put in a bad position because of turnover, they proceeded to allow something like -5 yards and force a field goal.
That's true.
Just to further drive home your point.
And the very last question before pick. A lot's been made about Penn State's explosive offense or lack thereof. That being said, something that we haven't talked about, and nobody's really talked about, is it hasn't been explosive, but this team is damn good at extending drives this year. Third down conversion rate this year, 48%, 42 for 87. Fourth down conversion rate, 11 for 12. I don't think Penn State needs to be overly explosive in this game, but if Penn State, I think, converts on the better side of 35% of their third downs on Saturday against Ohio State, they're going to be in a very good position to win this game.
Yeah, I mean, you look again, and part of this is I think they match up extremely well with this Ohio State team. You look at what has given Ohio State problems the last 2 years. The only team that has given Ohio State problems the last 2 years is Michigan.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, Penn State is playing Michigan brand football right now. Stifling defense. We're going to shove it down your throat for 4 or 5 yards at a clip. Hold the ball for 7-8 minutes at a time.
Ohio State's also struggled with Iowa in the past. Iowa just doesn't have the athleticism to withstand 4 quarters of Ohio State.
And I understand 2 years ago in Columbus, or last year, whichever one of those 2 games was in Columbus the last 2 years, McCarthy hit some deep shots early in that game that kind of opened things up. But ultimately, it came down to Michigan being able to just shove it down their throats with Corum, with Edwards, control the clock, run the ball, bully them around. And that's what Penn State has done to teams this year. So that's another reason why I like this matchup a lot for the Nittany Lions. It feels like in so many ways the stars are aligned for Saturday. And again, I know I said it, but it's just if not now, when are you ever going to get over the Buckeye Mountain? Because it feels like it is there for the taking.
Yeah, yep. Either of you have any final thoughts on this matchup? Anthony, any final words?
I guess my final words are like just
any stat matchup, anything you want to touch on at the here? Anything?
No.
Time's yours.
This is your best shot.
Yeah.
I mean, not just like to beat them in Columbus, to beat them, period. I mean, this is the first time in 6 years that you come into this game and equal to Ohio State. I think this is the best team that Penn State has had under James Franklin. And I think that this is the most, I don't want to say the worst Ohio State team, because that's not the proper wordage, just the most susceptible to loss Ohio State team that you've had in the last 10 to 15 years. If you're going to do it, especially in Columbus, the time is now. I think they just have to put on their big boy pants, go into Columbus, and find a way to get it done. There's no more talk about when you can do it or building up to closing the talent gap. This is your shot. Take your best shot, throw your best punch, and find a way to walk out of there with a win. And if you do, you can begin to climb the mountain if you're Penn State. And if you're James Franklin, you can finally shake that opinion that people have of you that you can't win big football games. I think there is, like we talked about in the beginning, there's so much on the line in this game. They have to find a way to get it done, period.
And before I hand it to Marty for his final thoughts, what I would add to that is this has a chance to be, for Penn State, a quote-unquote moment in time. You know, they had that win in 2016, and I think for the most part, they did a good job of building off that win. And because of that win, they are where they are today. But at the same time, they missed an opportunity off that win to take the program to heights it hadn't seen in a long time. I think this game this weekend, a win for Penn State, has a chance to give the Nittany Lions a second chance at taking the program to that next level. A win on Saturday, one win doesn't single-handedly, I think, widely change recruiting, but a win over Ohio State on Saturday would open a lot of eyes across the country, from fans, from media, and from recruits. And if they can build on that, and I mean, even if they win Saturday and then even lose close to Michigan, I mean, if they can go 11-1 this year with a win over Ohio State, it has a chance to be a monumental win for this program, and really put this program on track to be really good for the foreseeable future in an expanded college football playoff, and give themselves a chance to win national championships in the near future. A win can help recruit and become more consistent. It can get you in deeper into some of these recruitments they haven't been able to get deeper into, that could make the world of a difference down the road. So I think this is a moment in time for the Penn State football program. I don't want to say now or never, but if it doesn't happen this weekend, I think it's a big question mark of if it's not going to happen with the best team James Franklin's had, arguably one of the top 5 Penn State teams of the last 30 years, Marty. When's it going to happen? What are your final thoughts, Marty?
Yeah, it's.
I know that it makes this game quite heavy when you put it that way, but I think it's fair.
I've said it for months. This is the best team since at least 17. This is Franklin's best team. This is probably the best team since '94. Like
it has the chance to be, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's hollowed ground. That's hollowed ground at Penn State to be compared to that '94 team. It's hard for me to believe I'm going to sit here and say this, but I think they're going to go into Columbus.
And we'll segue this into our predictions, so go ahead.
Yeah, it's going to be nerve-wracking. It's not going to be easy, but I think they do it. I think somehow, some way, they find a way on Saturday to finally get over that mountain, to finally take that step as a program. This is truly, if this goes the way I'm going to predict it to go, this is truly a program-altering kind of win.
Yep.
This is the kind of win that, you know, maybe you don't move out of that cul-de-sac we were talking about earlier, but you start to put a down payment. You start to sign the paper.
You start drawing up a blueprint of the new house.
You do. You start to put that down payment, draw up the blueprints on that house in the penthouse region of college football. They find a way. I think this defense makes a big play late, rather it's a strip sack, rather it's an interception, a turnover and down, something. I think the defense comes through for them. I'm going to say Penn State 24, Ohio State 21. They find a way to get it done. They get the biggest regular season win of the James Franklin era. And, you know, to James's credit, I think this silences a lot of his doubters, a lot of his haters. Because people can say what they want about James Franklin as a football coach, but if you go back to the start of throw 14 and 15 out the window when his roster was a complete freaking disaster. Since the start of the 2016 season, James Franklin is 3-4 against Michigan, which is very respectable.
Yeah.
And other than being 1-6 against Ohio State, has mostly cleaned house against everybody else. And if you can get yourself to where you're beating everybody, we're going 500 against Michigan, and then up that also going 500 against Ohio State, you're a damn good football program. They get there. I don't know how it's going to happen Saturday. It's going to be stressful. It's going to be painful. It's going to be anxiety-ridden. But in the end, when we were sitting there at about 4 o'clock or so on Saturday afternoon, and that 3:30 window games are starting to kick off, Penn State rises above. They find a way to get this done. I'm going to say Penn State wins at 24-21 in what would be the biggest regular season win, if not the biggest single win James Franklin has had as head coach at Penn State. And quite honestly, one of the biggest regular season wins Penn State would have had, and probably, hell, you might be able to go back to that 2005 game against Ohio State.
Yeah.
Last time they had a truly, like, program-altering kind of victory.
Yeah, this has an opportunity to be that type of a game, that's for sure. Anthony, well, good luck following that up. What's your prediction?
Yeah, no, I'm not even going to try. I mean, I've never been the type to just sit here and predict that, Penn State could get an upset win against Ohio State, because, yeah, most years from 2018 to 2022, I didn't think that they really could do it.
Yeah.
Last year at home, you thought, maybe if the stars align and everything falls into place, but like it would have taken the stars aligning and everything falling into place. This team, just top to bottom, feels different than other Penn State teams that we've seen, even other good Penn State teams that we've seen. This team defensively feels like they have an edge to it. Personally, as a Penn State fan, I've never seen before. We've talked about that edge multiple times, but that edge is what can win you big games like this. Yeah. Offensively, this team has the capabilities. They haven't shown it consistently throughout the year, but they have the capability to make big plays. They have the capability to score in key moments. And they have the talent and the explosiveness, to make it happen. I tend to agree. I'm in a shitty situation. I have to work on Saturday because of a scheduling conflict that I won't be able to watch the game at all, but I will be on my phone.
That may be better for your health.
It might be better for my health. Your physical, mental health.
The good news is Anthony works in a hospital, so he will be well taken care of if
when
anything.
When he strokes over, they'll be ready to pounce.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I'll be checking my phone as much as I possibly can throughout that game because God, I'm not gonna be able to focus on work at all. But regardless, I think that Penn State can win this game. I said from the beginning of the year, I think that Penn State could win this game. I'm going to stick by it. I'm going to say that Penn State goes into Columbus and wins a thriller. I'm going to say 30-24 Penn State. And Penn State gets the program-altering win. James Franklin gets a legacy-defining win. And Penn State, like you said, starts to lay down that blueprint for their new penthouse suite. I want it so bad. I know you guys want it so bad. This fan base needs it. We've been crying out for it, and it's time. And I think everybody in that program knows that it's time to go do it. So I'm going to predict that they freaking go in and do it.
One thing real quick, Dylan, before you go, I'm sorry, but I just want to build off something Anthony said real quick. You mentioned how in the last 4 or 5 years, maybe if the stars align. What's crazy to me is, obviously, it's not that way this year, right? Like, I was texting my buddy Adam today, and he and I were like, you know what? Penn State could probably come out and play at like 80% and probably still win this game. Like, not saying they'll do that win for sure, but like, they have wiggle room this year. They have some gray area where they can come out and make a stupid play or two, and they don't have to play. You've always thought they had to play perfect football to beat Ohio State and get some lucky bounces. That's what we saw in 2016, right? They played almost a perfect game defensively, got some lucky bounces on special teams, kind of got lucky a few times on offense, and got a victory. It doesn't feel like that has to be the way. That doesn't feel like the blueprint this time around, where they can just come out and just play their brand of football and be better, which that alone should inspire confidence, and just it kind of reflects on the growth of this program as a whole.
Yeah, well said. All right, so you both were picking Penn State. Sorry, I, as you can tell, am wearing red. Now that was not on purpose, but I am wearing red today. I do apologize for those Penn State fans who are probably been cursing me out, watching us on YouTube for the last hour and a half, wondering why the hell am I wearing red when Penn State's playing Ohio State this week. The good news is I'm not picking Ohio State. Good news for them is I'm not picking Ohio State to win this game. I'm picking Penn State to win this game. I think Penn State is the legitimately better team coming into this week, and I've thought they've been the better team for most of the season. I think this defense is not just one of the best in the Big Ten. I think this is one of the best in the country. I think this is the best defense in the country. I don't think there's a defense that has more athleticism than, and it's saying something, but I don't think there's a defense that has more athleticism, size, speed than Penn State does this year. I don't think Georgia has a better defense. I don't think Alabama has a better defense. I don't think Michigan has a better defense. I think the best defense resides in Happy Valley. And I think they have one of the best defensive coordinators in the country in Manny Diaz. Offensively, Penn State, we did the matchup position by position. Ohio State probably still has a little bit of a matchup offensively, and it's a bigger matchup and a bigger advantage than that just because the wide receivers are so damn good and Cade Stover is so damn good. That being said, I think Penn State's defense can cancel that out. What I think is ultimately the difference maker here is that I think this Penn State team overall has an attitude and a moxie that past teams haven't. And to use kind of a similarity that I'm seeing is obviously I'm a Phillies fan, but this Phillies team this year in the playoffs, it feels much different than last year's Phillies team in the playoffs. Last year's Phillies team just felt they were happy to be there. They were just going to see how long they could go. This year's Phillies team feels like a team on a mission, a team that knows that they are arguably, I don't think arguably, the best team left in all of baseball in the playoffs and have a legitimate chance to win the World Series. Obviously, they're one of the 4 teams left. But they've seemed like a team on a mission all postseason. I think that's why they have a great chance of winning the World Series. And that's why I think Penn State has a great chance of winning on Saturday in Columbus, is that this team feels like it's a team on a mission. Everybody knows their role. Everybody sticks to their role very well, defensively and offensively. Penn State hasn't been explosive offensively. They haven't had to. We talked about it just a few minutes ago. They've converted on third downs and fourth downs at an extremely high rate. They're staying on schedule with their offense. It's not sexy, but guess what? Sexy does need to win college football. You don't need to be sexy to win in college football. I mean, look at Georgia. That Georgia offense last year wasn't special. They had Stetson Bennett as their quarterback. And I know he played against SEC defenses, but guess what? Stetson Bennett cannot hold a candle to Drew Allar's talent level. He can't hold a candle to Kyle McCord's talent level. I mean, you can win playing non-sexy football in college football. I know that kind of went out the window with spread offenses taking over for a long time, but I think Georgia kind of has shown that you can still do that. And I think Michigan has shown you can still do that. And I think that's how Penn State's going to win on Saturday. I think Penn State has the advantage on both lines of scrimmage. I think Penn State's going to be able to a degree, dominate the time of possession in this game. I think the offense is going to move the ball just well enough, and I think the defense is going to get just enough stops. I also think Penn State probably gets a big defensive or special teams play in this game that flips momentum they take advantage of, and I ultimately think they win because of it. With that, let me pull up my score because I do forget the score. Give me Penn State to win this game 27-24. I think they finally get it done. And like I said, if it's not this year, I don't know when. But as Anthony said, he said you guys want it. Obviously, by you guys, I mean, obviously Anthony wants it. Marty, we know. I will say, as journalists, we're supposed to be objective people, and I think I do a very good job being objective. And I grew up in a Penn State family. My one cousin played for Penn State, but I mean, as a journalist, I think I'm very much objective. I really have no care anymore about which way these games go. Marty, you came from Black Shoe Dyers like me, but you still kind of have a little bit of that fandom in you, and I know you want it. I know Anthony wants it, but I know our readers want it. I know all of Nittany Nation wants this win. James Franklin wants this win. The coach, everybody wants this win around this program, and I think this is a program. This is a game that, like Marty and Anthony said, can change the fortunes of this program going forward if they do what we think they can do on Saturday. And I think they get it done. And if they beat Ohio State on Saturday, I still think Michigan is a team that matches up well against Penn State. And I think I'd pick Michigan right now. But if you win this game, all you need to do is beat Michigan at home, which sounds easier said than done, but a win on Saturday puts Penn State on a path of doing something they have never done, which is make a college football playoff. But it puts them on a path to potentially go 11-1 and 12-0, which is heights we have not seen this program hit in quite a long time. And I do think they get that win on Saturday that puts them on that path. All right. Any final thoughts?
The one thing I will say is you mentioned about, a win on Saturday puts the program on a path to get to heights we have not seen in a very long time. I think we all agree. They win on Saturday. They're at worst going to finish 11-1, right?
Yeah.
They have not won 11 regular season games since 2008.
Yeah.
Like that right there, I think speaks volumes. You go back further than that. They have not won. If you go back further than that 2008 season, the last time they won 11 regular season games before that was that just renowned, whatever term you want to put on it, 94 season.
Sure.
So, 11 win regular seasons don't happen a lot around here. And you win Saturday, you're going to win at least 11 games in the regular season. And again, that's part of taking that step. That's part of going from the gated cul-de-sac to the penthouse. And that's part of, to use James's own terminology, that's part of where you go from great to elite, right? That's great to elite. You win Saturday. It's been 5 freaking years in the making, but you win Saturday, and you can finally say, or be in a position to say, you know what, we've done it. We've gone from great to elite.
Great callback there, and I 100% agree. And Sixers fans aren't gonna like this comparison because there's a chance it goes this way. But obviously, as a Sixers fan, the process that the Sixers have gone through, the last few years has felt like that chance for the process to show its fruits and win an NBA title. For Penn State, this is the opportunity to not to put to bed, because the job, if they win Saturday, isn't done. But if Penn State wins Saturday, like Marty said, it's that moment in time Penn State goes from a great program to an elite program. And that was a great comparison. A great callback, and I 100% agree with you, Marty. But it's that opportunity that, in a way, the Sixers have had the last few years. But I think Penn State, unlike the Sixers, kind of completes that story on Saturday. Anthony, any final thoughts? Our listeners have been gracious enough to listen to us for an hour and 45 minutes. Any final thoughts?
It's boldy to assume they're still listening. But
our listeners are passionate about Penn State football.
My final thoughts is that it is currently 12:05 a.m. on a Thursday night / Friday morning, and I'm ready to go to bed. So let's
36 hours to kick off. 36 hours to kick off. That's your final thought? All right.
That's my final thought. Sure. Yep. Sounds good.
All right. Well, with that, everybody, thank you for listening to another episode of the Penn State 365 podcast. Thank you for listening to us for almost 2 hours talking about this game. But I think it was well worth your 2 hours. We went through this game deeper than we've gone through any other game in the history of this podcast. There's no bigger game that we've covered in the history of this podcast than this week's game. I hope you enjoyed listening. Thank you for listening. Be sure to go subscribe to us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to us. Go on Twitter. Follow us at PSU365. Follow Penn State Rivals on Twitter. Find us on Facebook and Instagram as well. Go to HappyValleyInsider.com. Sign up for at least a free account. Join our amazing board. You can sign up for a free trial, get access to our premium board, where you'll have access to everything under the sun that we report, recruiting news on the field, off the field, everything in between. And until then, everybody, until we talk after Saturday afternoon, after Saturday afternoon's matchup, have a good one. Enjoy the game on Saturday. Enjoy your weekend. And we'll see what happens on Saturday. It will be interesting to see where Penn State's football program is when the dust settles in Columbus on Saturday afternoon. Have a good one, everybody. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to everybody real soon.